Some people want to know who their birth mother is, who their birth father is, if they have siblings. They want to know their origin story, their chapter 1. Some people really want to have an accurate and current medical history for themselves and for their children. Some people are in a medical crisis and have a need for that medical history to develop a treatment plan and to know exactly how to handle their medical crisis. And some people want to understand their genetic traits, where they get their personality, where they get their eyes, their nose, their height. They want to see people that look like them. And it's much deeper than a simple curiosity. So that's some of the reasons that adoptees search, and the reasons for every person can be deeply different, unique, and personal. And same with birth parents. Some people just want to know that the decisions that were made were good decisions. They want to know what happened. Sometimes birth parents will contact me, they're reaching the end of their lives and they want to have some closure on this. They want to know what happened. Sometimes they have medical information that they feel a deep need to share, whether it's a cancer diagnosis in the family or something like Huntington's. So they really want to share that. And sometimes they just want the adoptee to know that they were loved and thought of, and that this was a decision made out of love. And some people just really never had closure over the relinquishment and really feel heartbroken and want to reach out to the adoptee and let them know that they've thought about them every day and that they're open to contact. Sometimes we get siblings that want to find their siblings who were placed for adoption, relinquished for adoption. And they might not find out that this happened till maybe birth mom is getting older and maybe has dementia, or sometimes records are found after a death in the family, and this will come out. And so siblings will want to find their siblings, and that can be a deep desire. Other times we've had siblings that have the state has taken custody of the siblings and they've been separated. And they remember their little brother, that they changed his diaper and made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for him. And they want to know what happened to him. And it's, they're really just heartbroken that they want to know that their little brother had a good life. So these can be deep, deep desires. So those are some of the reasons, again, unique, personal, and very heartfelt.
I know we've had several sets of siblings that were adopted through foster care and maybe did spend some time together, early in that journey, and then got separated. And that's an important issue. So
it really is.
Yeah, we'll be talking a little bit about sibling rights, I think, when we do our public policy freshly squeezed scoop later in the month. Can you talk a little bit about the commercial DNA tests and some other folks that might come to us that aren't necessarily specifically related to adoption, but can use our services, and why they might come?
So with the commercial DNA discovery tests, there have been DNA discoveries. So people might get results that they don't quite understand. So we can help them understand what those results mean, whether it's ethnicity or they're matching with relatives and they don't know those relatives. Some people have found through that somebody in their family was relinquished for adoption, or that they themselves have misattributed parentage. So that can be a variety of things, misattributed parentage. It could be that somebody was an adoptee themselves and it's a late discovery, like they just found out through taking that DNA test. It can mean that, and I have a personal experience with this as well. I have a half brother who has misattributed parentage. So I found him, and we actually share a father, or my birth father is his father, but he grew up with another man as his father. That man's his father on his birth certificate, and he didn't know until he took the DNA test that he had a different father. So, and then also people might discover that they're donor conceived through taking a DNA test. So there's a variety of different things. So.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about our search program, the purpose of the program, the structure of the program?
Sure. We provide assistance to adult adoptees, to birth parents searching for adult adoptees, and to adoptive parents searching for the birth family of a minor child. We can provide assistance if the adoptive parents are part of that. We also provide assistance to people with misattributed parentage or DNA discoveries. We have the technical expertise of the over 30 decades that Adoption Network has been doing this. And also that provides us a deep understanding of the emotional journey, both for those searching and for those being found, oftentimes out of the blue. So we can provide support and guidance through that journey and individualized recommendations for making contact if we get to that point and the person who's searching wants to do that. We can provide individualized guidance through each point in the search as well. Every search is unique, so depending on where you're born, what agency handled the adoption, what county handled the adoption and that probate court, there's going to be different instructions, different ways of getting that information, so we can help provide guidance on that. In what to say when you're talking to people, how to say it, what not to say. So those are some of the ways that we can help. And the journey is only traveled once, this journey of search generally. So we come at it from the perspective that it's not a journey that somebody needs to travel alone. We're here, we have lots of different resources, from our virtual general meetings to our resource page, podcast, books. Different people might need a different touch. Some people feel better with books, some people feel better talking to other people. We're here to help people find what their need is, as well as working individually with me. We ask that people become members if they decide to search with us and get one-on-one guidance, but we never turn anybody away for inability to pay. So, and that's a really important thing, because a lot of times adoptees or birth parents might be strapped for money at the time, and we don't want to keep them from being able to complete their search. So that is a really important part of our program. And we also stress the importance of self-preparation. Sometimes, it's so easy to rush into a search with so much available online and with DNA tests. But we can kind of help set the pace and pull it back a little and talk about some of these other things that are important to think about as you're walking in, and potentially making contact, helping people understand the perspectives of the person on the other side can be really powerful as they're considering their own steps. So we understand that adoption's a lifelong journey. So somebody might not have any interest in searching at one point in their life, and then a decade later be very interested in that, or 2 decades later. So we also know that somebody being found might not be ready to be found, but that can change as well. So helping people understand that it's a lifelong evolving journey for everyone on both sides.
Thanks.
Mhm.
And talk a little bit about how our search program has changed in recent years, some of the current needs that we're seeing and what's different and how we're meeting those needs.
Sure. So I talked a little bit at first, but to me, it was I first searched for my birth family in the late 1990s after I had my own kids and really had a deep need, desire, wanted to have medical history. I finally felt like I have kids, I have to have it for them. Nobody wanted it for me, but I want it for my kids. And at that point, Betsie, I have to give you so much credit for leading the charge for over 25 years, because I just really, at that point, thought I couldn't imagine it happening. So that was a huge part of the Adoption Network, I think, is getting those records opened. So getting access to original birth records in Ohio has been a huge thing for Adoption Network. And then I started in this role in 2016. At that point, DNA tests had been for sale for years, and people were making cousin matches, but it wasn't quite catching on as much. Ancestry's database was 3 million. It's now over 20 million. So that makes searches through DNA much more, we're able to find, who the birth parents are much quicker and with far less research, into hundreds of years ago. We're talking about a few generations back. So we can do that. And so as a result of my, my involvement and the DNA launching and you guys being so supportive of us, seeing this need for DNA search, adding DNA as a tool to our searches, we expanded the program. And it's really amazing. We're helping people tear down brick walls. So that's really been powerful. And now we see, with that expansion into DNA, we recognized there are also unmet needs of people with misattributed parentage. So we're trying to we are meeting those needs, and we've launched a new DNA discovery discussion and support group to help meet that need as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I think people having access to information and DNA has been a real game changer in terms of what people need. I think there's still the same baseline, but how they get it can be very different these days. And so thanks.
And I can also say, before I leave, because I know we didn't talk about this before, but another thing that Adoption Network has really advocated for in Ohio is the non-identifying information. And so that, combined with the DNA, is a powerful tool as well. So that always being on top of the advocacy for that has been really powerful for adoptees as well. I help adoptees and others, that are from other states as well. So I see what they have access to, and it's made an impact here. So.
Good. For anybody who's listening, non-identifying information is the agency file, and they can't give names and addresses and phone numbers, although now with the access to the vital statistics records, much of that can be gotten different ways, but the agency can give a non-identifying summary of what they have in their files, which is social and medical history, mostly social and family history type things. Well, thanks, Traci. With that, I'm going to ask Dan to pop back in, and Dan's got a very interesting story that unfolded right before our eyes, and he's going to share a little bit about that because it illustrates the program.
Yeah, thanks, Betsie. So as Traci mentioned, I'm Dan Carroll. I was actually working at Adoption Network at the time that my story kind of started. So I was in the middle of kind of the transition from 3 million in Ancestry to 20 million today. It was November of 2017, and I said, we're talking about this need to grow the database, and with the best of intentions saying, I want to be a connection for somebody, right? We need to build that network, and we see these people that we're supporting, and I want to do my part. Personally, I'd also wanted to know, my dad passed when I was 12, but he said, he talked a lot about his, Native American heritage and all these different things that I really just wanted to know more about. My mom's side had a lot of genealogists on it, but my dad's side didn't really have a whole lot of mapping out. So I decided to take a test. Black Friday. This is now common on several things: Black Friday, DNA Day, etc. Ancestry had a big sale, and I said, you know what, this is the perfect time to do it. Around the holidays, around Christmas time, I get my results back, and it shows I have 40% Italian heritage, and I'm like, my dad was mistaken. He mistook this Native American for Italian. So that's really what the mix-up was. And I'm asking my mom, how do we find out more? And she's like, well, I'll help you. We went to a play that night. She said, I'll help you when we get home. Don't worry, we'll talk about it later. The next night we sit down. As I've started to do a little bit of research, she let us know that my brother and I were both donor conceived through a sperm bank in Akron. And so that was, a little bit of a shock to us. They had decided that they wanted to keep that information private. It was just the two of them and the medical staff that knew that, and it was just their choice at the time. My first reaction was shock. Didn't really know what to do, right? Just like anybody who gets that kind of DNA discovery, you don't really know what that means. You question identity, but the big thing is I didn't know what to do. So I'm doing, a couple of Google searches. I'm not finding anything that really makes a whole lot of sense. I don't know where to turn, but I knew I was working at Adoption Network. I know that they've encountered these kind of things before with adoption and search and reunion. And so then it was a text to Traci and Linda Bellini, another one of the volunteers on the search staff. And I said, hey, you're not going to believe this, but I'm going to need to utilize some of the services that we have here. And they said, great. They were so helpful. It was really three things that I found, right? I came in, I set up a meeting for after Christmas. It was the emotional support of, we understand what you're going through, right? And that's what we're all looking for when we're experiencing that, is someone who understands. And you have somebody that you can trust, that has an organization that has a track record, right? You know that you're not going to be left in the lurch as you start this journey. It's also the access to the records. I had a third cousin match, but I didn't know where to start. And so I was able to work with Traci to say, all right, well, here's this person's kind of couple of generations back, and here's how we can get started. From there, I did a little bit of research on my own, but Traci and team also gave me a script and said, hey, if you need to reach out to anybody as you're doing research, let us know. Here's a basic script of what you can say. Maybe don't open with, hey, I'm donor conceived and there may be some sort of family mystery, and can you help me figure out how? That often can result in doors shut that you don't want shut. And so you kind of start with a softer approach, and it's a nuance that you wouldn't necessarily just pick up naturally, right? Because naturally you'd say, well, I'm being honest. It's full, and again, you're not being dishonest, but it's a way that's really helpful to keep those doors open. And then, finally, I was able to kind of narrow down to who we thought ultimately the biological father donor was. It took about a week. Again, this is different in these days with DNA matches and research being online. And, we started with a couple of yearbooks, but quickly progressed to being able to kind of figure out who it was. I then sat with that information for a few months, and this is not uncommon. I think, if you were to ask Traci, there's people that sit with this information for varying lengths of time, deciding if they want to make contact. Took me a couple of months, and I did decide I wanted to make contact. So I reached out to a first cousin match that had popped up in that time while I was waiting, that said, yeah, I would be willing to help. I know of him, the gentleman that we were looking at, and said, I can reach out to him with your permission. And so she did, and he was able to confirm that yes, this was him. He didn't want any contact. was something that he considered a part of his past life, his donation. It was very private to him, and he didn't want contact. And so again, that was emotionally difficult to hear. But Traci and the team were there to say, hey, this is something normal. I was able to go to the Adoption Network's Rocky River support and discussion meeting for a few months. And I kept going for a couple of years, right? This is an ongoing journey. And ultimately then that support ended up being good because I was still going, and in March of 2019, I was no longer working at Adoption Network at the time, but I had 2 siblings pop up within a few weeks. And I said, wow, what does this mean? What do I do? Again, these are all experiences for the first time. And Adoption Network, again, was there to help guide me and say, this is the best way to approach it. This is what we found works, right? It's not just, this is our opinion. It's, this is what works. This is what doesn't. We've seen it time and time again. Not every situation is going to be the same, but 9 times out of 10, they've got the right answer. And it's not always going to be the answer we want, but it's going to be the answer that's going to help keep relationships open, because this is what this is all about, is new relationships that have been created and established and found, and we want to keep those doors open. So I would say, I've working at Adoption Network, I know, I've written grants for the organization, and this is funding that isn't available anywhere, it's completely honest. And this is an organization that really provides services that you can't find anywhere else for everything. To be able to, you might be able to find a search angel willing to help you with your search, but do they have 30 years of experience? You might be able to find a support group of other folks who've done it, but are they coming at it with the right balanced approach that represents everybody that's involved to make sure you're getting the best advice? It's something that is unique. That's why it's so important that this is available, that this is known to people, right? Nobody expects to have a DNA discovery. Some people go into a search intentionally, and there's the other path of people not intending to find out what they find out and need that support. And so it's just incredibly important that this continues to be available for people in the future, for ongoing support. I know in the years to come, I'm going to need it. And so it needs to be there for everybody, to come after me and for my future needs as well.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
We're going to have, I think, a few minutes for question and answer. So if you do have questions, feel free to put those into chat. Just to talk about what the future holds for this program, to end on a note about kind of what's new or what's coming up for us. Traci did mention the DNA discovery group. So this past year, we took all of our programs online virtually, and we found that really we have a national audience for a lot of our programs. And I'm sorry, my dog decided to bark now of all times. But that there was really a need for a support atmosphere specific to people having DNA discoveries. We're a very inclusive organization. And so we want to make sure that people feel really welcomed in. And sometimes people are having DNA discoveries because of an adoption search. Other times, like Dan was talking about, they kind of stumble into it. And it's really important to have an environment where people can come with that specific situation. So we converted one of our long-term support and discussion meetings to have that particular focus, and that's been extremely successful. We launched it with a panel speaking, and typically our support meetings have maybe up to 20 people because you don't want to have so many people you can't speak. But that event drew pretty close to, I think it was about 90 people, and so we had a very powerful opening with that. And it's been quite well attended. We are right in the midst of finding ways to market these types of services to the broader community. So our name, we talk about our name a lot, and it's a great name, but it maybe also holds us back in a certain way because Adoption Network Cleveland, it's locally, geographically specific to Cleveland and also adoption specific. And so how do we let people know that we have this broader range of service? And so again, people might not know that they have a need for the service until they stumble into it, and they're not necessarily going to be looking up on the internet, adoption, because that might not be how they got here. So that's something that we're grappling with, is how to make this a broad-based service that is obviously available out there in the community. And then really working on the broader issues of genetic identity. So we've lived and breathed this for 33 years with adoption. I, over the years had watched this coming with the donor conceived community and the different philosophical thoughts on, if you tell kids or when you tell kids that they were donor conceived, and watching, some of the same patterns that we have, I think, helped to undo in adoption, get, done and now undone in the donor conceived community. And so, really looking at issues of genetic identity. And again, that's something that we'll be talking about in our legislative advocacy session as well. So with that, we have a few minutes. We'll stay a couple minutes extra because I think we do have a couple of questions. Let me open chat.
Me too. Tracy, we had a question about what kinds of tools you use to find adoptees' parents.
So every search is going to be unique. So it's going to depend on where that adoptee was born, if they can get their original birth certificate, if we can get information from the agency that handled the adoption. And if the adoptee is willing to do DNA. Not everybody is open to doing DNA, but I would strongly recommend DNA as well. But it's really important to get the documents first, because sometimes your searching can be solved that way. You can find who you're looking for directly. And so that's really powerful and important to do. And DNA, if you decide to do DNA, Ancestry is the largest with over 20 million data in their database. 23andMe is the second largest. So if you can do both, that's great. If you can do one, I'd start with Ancestry. And then I would have them download their DNA and upload it to a few other sites as well.
To add to that, I think there's a lot of public databases, marriage licenses, the non-identifying information from the agency that was mentioned earlier are all also important sources. As you're piecing together, you want to know as much about the people that you're finding as you can so that you know what you're walking into.
Yeah, and know as much as about the people in their lives too. So you really have a full understanding of it.
Are we able to support search assistance with international adoptees?
So our expertise is going to be domestic adoptions, but we can help find the appropriate search nonprofit that's helping with that particular country. We do have support, though, through our virtual meetings, through our DNA discovery. That type of support is still available too.
And Dan mentioned our general discussion meetings. Can you talk a little bit about how those support the search assistance program, how they're integrated with the program?
Sure. Our meetings, we have 6 a month, and one is our DNA discovery meeting, and we just launched our new birth mothers support meeting as well. And they can be very powerful especially for people involved in search, but really for anyone who's touched by adoption. But as part of the search program, adoptees can go and meet with other adult adoptees who have completed their own search or who have been found. And you can hear the authentic stories of adoption reunion, or making out and not having reaching out, not making out, reaching out to make contact and not having a reunion, and what that felt like. And possibly it changed in 5 years, but maybe it didn't. And how does one deal with those emotions? But then they also normalizing all those emotions and experiences, and helping people to know that, yeah, right now it might feel big and overwhelming and all you can think about, but it will become more normal and it will integrate into your life. It will be part of your journey and your experience. So helping people to understand all that. For me, when I first went to a general meeting, this was in the late 90s, it was the first time that I heard birth mother speak. So to understand that perspective and to hear what her journey was like really impacted my own next steps and how I proceeded with my search in a way that was very powerful and felt more deeply than, if somebody just explained it to me, but didn't have that experience themselves. So we strongly recommend, if you have a chance to experience a general meeting, it's a great opportunity. And now with them all being held virtually, it's really easy to attend. So.
Traci, I want to circle back. You mentioned that everybody goes through this once. And so, not being alone on that journey and helping to have realistic expectations or know what the range of experience might be, I think is one way to sum up what people hopefully get from coming to the general meetings, watching other people go through that in different stages.
Yes, absolutely.
So. Great, well, our time is up. Thank you, everybody. I think we got to all the questions. Traci did put the information from our website into the chat. So if you want more information about the program, you can check out the website and you can reach out directly to Traci. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dan, for coming.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Okay.
Okay.